Welcome to Be Well with MS, a space where we talk honestly about living with multiple sclerosis, beyond MRI scans, clinical events, relapses, and what's visible in the outside world. I am Dr. Agne Straukiene, neurologist, and the host of Be Well with MS Podcast. Today we are talking about something many people with MS live with every single day: invisibility. MS is often described as invisible disease. You can look well, sound, even be told you're doing great. Everything is fine. You're fine. Whilst quietly managing fatigue, pain, tingling, brain fog, uncertainty, and sometimes loss. Today I'm joined by Amy Thompson, the founder of MS Together charity, supporting young people living with MS. With lived experience of MS, Amy is deeply passionate about reducing isolation, changing misconception around invisible illnesses, and creating safe, inclusive spaces for connection and support. So welcome to this episode, Amy.
Thank you so much. Very happy to be here.
How are you today?
I'm really good. Thank you. Yeah, all good.
Amy, if MS were visible on the outside and people actually can start seeing what's going on, what do you think they would finally understand about your day-to-day living with MS?
Yeah, so I think people would definitely understand MS a lot better if they could see it. I think they would understand that every day involves a lot of calculation and adaptation. And I think, for example, I wake up every day and I evaluate how I'm feeling. So how much energy I have, what I need to do that day, whether I'll have enough energy to do it. And I always say that I compare it to is if someone has, for example, a broken leg, people immediately understand the limits that they have and the frustration or pain that they might be feeling. But with MS and lots of other invisible conditions, it's just not that simple. And I think even though MS can be visible for some people, the fact that MS affects everyone so differently, it just makes it so much harder for people to understand what you're actually going through. And I think for me, it's just like I said before, the kind of constant management. So pacing yourself, adapting, planning rest and listening to your body when you need to. And just the uncertainty around living with MS as well, and just not knowing how you feel from one day to the next. So I think, yeah, people would just understand that, yes, sometimes I can push through and I can do all the things I want to do, but other days there is a lot going on beneath the surface and that's always shifting as well. I think if people could see that, there would be a much better understanding of what people go through.
I believe that maybe, Amy, that would build an empathy,
Yeah.
better understanding of the nature. Living with this chronic condition that you're describing really captures that something is hidden and no one thing can be seen, and it shapes like every day's decision. There are days that perhaps it limits you if it is a severe fatigue and people look at you, you're making glamorous, your hair is nicely done, you're glowing in your skin, you just done your marathon, you run 5K, but then 2 days later you maybe want to spend some time on the sofa because there is an exhaustion that is part of illness and disease. And if people could see all these kind of different colors, and if these kind of symptoms could light a color, it's like amber, green, or red, and it would be a cue for people to, okay, she needs some rest, she needs some good time to pamper herself and spend some time doing nothing, maybe. And that could give a bit of people confidence in communicating with you adequately by using their empathy and without causing you an anxiety and fear of things that you can't do at the time because of the lack of energy. And then people could stay away from you and then come back when they see this kind of green light when you're like fully energetic. But I think, Amy, it's a language, isn't it? You need to be more communicative. You need to express yourself often, because what's not visible, then how do you communicate? How do you explain things? And building that kind of connection with other people that they could find you whether it's a facial expression or certain things that you start doing at home that indicates to other people and family members that you really now exhausted and you need some time. So do you have any sort of tips, like how is your partner noticing that he needs to stay away and give you some space? Or are there any sort of recommendations for people day to day?
I think it is just pretty much what you've said. It's around communication. And I think to begin with, I wasn't that good at doing that. And I didn't communicate my needs. But I think that is the only way that you'll get the support that you need, because I understand that one day I'm able to run a marathon and the next day I might not be able to do anything. I understand that it's very difficult for someone to understand and comprehend. So I think that is where you have to advocate for yourself, speak up when you do need that space, when you do need that rest, take the time to rest. And then I think, yeah, communication is one thing, but then I think your loved ones, the more you do communicate how you're feeling, the more they then might pick up on those kind of subtle cues and signs that might mean that you need a bit more time or space or rest. So yeah.
Because there is a constant need to explain, justify, prove that you're struggling with invisible disease, isn't it? It's never ending. And it may feel exhausting activity because people come at you and say, hey, you look well. Have you ever felt painful and invalidating rather than reassuring when people come and tell you, you're fine, nothing is wrong with you? Like, how does that feel?
Yeah, I think definitely in the beginning. So when I first got diagnosed and I first started telling people that I had MS, I was constantly met with comments like, you don't look ill, you look so well, and like a lot of confusion around that as well, which again, I do completely understand.
Amy, I'm just thinking, nobody has got any bad intentions by saying that. They all feel like they're going to uplift your spirits and say, hey, but you're nice, everything is so good. So I think that could be such a well-intended phrase, yet it can land very differently when you're living inside the body, that it doesn't feel comfortable on occasion. So I guess, again, maybe implementing some sort of acceptance steps. I don't know, cognitive behavior therapy, would that help? And acceptance therapy, okay, this is going to happen to me more often because people potentially have no intentions for me to hurt. Each time I hear these words to me, maybe taking it gently and observing from other person's perspective and saying, hey, looking at the whole thing more neutral, trying not to take that personally. And you know what you're doing to help yourself anyway, to feel better. And maybe gently reminding, whilst you're hearing these kind of hurtful words to you, that you internally, inside you use your own voice and say, yeah, people, you should know better. But obviously don't say that to other people because that would be classed rude, in particular in the UK. That would be rude. So just listen, nod if you can, but have your own sort of strategies in place when you each time hear that kind of conversation, because it can be overwhelming and emotionally upsetting. But if you have a nice strategy, psychological strategy in place, like cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, or ACT, acceptance therapy of your situation, and having some sort of a kind words to yourself at the time when it happens, it may really help you to move throughout the day without dwelling too much what you just heard about yourself. Would you agree, Amy, that it's some sort of a internal strategy? Do you talk to yourself?
I suppose, yeah, I guess I have over the years when that conversation does come up. But I think the other thing is, as I've gone through my MS journey and as I've got more confident in kind of talking about the condition, and as I've learned more about the condition as well, I think it's pushed me in the other way to almost challenge those assumptions in a kind way. But it's almost an opportunity to open up conversations around invisible illness and, educate people on the fact that, yes, I might look well, but I'm still managing these symptoms. And I think just having those conversations is what can hopefully just educate people more about the condition in general, and then hopefully mean that they say less of those things. But yeah, I think in the beginning it was definitely harder to hear, but over time I realized that it is just people not understanding, and it's always coming from a good place.
Yeah. Yeah. And my recommendation would be live your life as it is. Own your own reality. And you don't need to pay into someone's delusion. You can think about as a delusional thought, maybe, of someone who goes and tells you the stories of how things are, how wonderful things are. But if you are grounded, if you know your own reality and you're living what is here, now, and always, that's how you come to your own identity and who you are without any distraction and mental overwhelm. Moving on to Amy, the work and related issues. Currently, the lives we're living is so ambitious. You have to prove your point. You have to achieve goals, and you have to be ambitious. You have to be productive every single day, especially in the world that is giving you rewards, visible outputs. We have a lot of going on in this world. How do you manage this?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult. I would say that I'm still very ambitious. I don't think that's changed very much at all, but I am more aware of pace and boundaries that I need to put in place, and the long-term impacts that has as well. And I think founding a charity while living with MS hasn't been easy, but it's taught me that productivity isn't about constant output. It's more about doing what you can when you can. And over a kind of longer period, you will still get the output that you want. It just might sometimes take a little bit longer. But that said, it is something that I definitely do still struggle with. And I think for the reasons that you mentioned, Agne, I think we live in a world that revolves around output, and I think unlearning that kind of idea and being a bit easier on myself when it comes to that has been a learning curve in itself. And there are still days when, you know, taking a rest day feels uncomfortable, and I think I just then have to remind myself that it's just it's a part of managing the condition, and it's not a failure. It's just necessary to keep going in the longer term. So yeah, it's something that I think is an ongoing struggle because of the world we live in. But I think it's something, again, that I've learned over time, that it is so important to take that time to pace yourself, to set boundaries when you need to. And I think it does help you in the long run.
Yeah, totally. What you're describing is like rewriting what the success looks like these days. And I think this rule applies to anybody, not necessarily living with MS. It applied to me and everyone else. We have to pace and we have to slow down. We have our own lane of this kind of marathon or competition, and we're competing only with ourselves, nobody else. We choose our own battle. We choose sometimes who do you want to overtake, maybe, or we want to take our time and slow down and not to compete at all. It's our conscious decision and choice. And you know, we should all move away from constant productivity, setting the goals, achieving, in particular, I'm talking about the fixed goals that is difficult to achieve. Going to gym 45 minutes a day, every day type of goal. Who is going to achieve that? I can't do this, can you? Nobody can. And getting to this kind of more flexible goal setting, which would be, I'm moving to the right direction. I've done some exercise this week. I'm feeling okay. If I do more, I'll feel even more better. If I don't, I will be having more rest. That kind of language with ourselves, I think, shapes how we feel day to day. And I think we're moving towards more sustainability rather than productivity, which is, we're not working in the factory. We can take time. And there are so many other tools to help and assist us with a daily task. My patients are using some Alexa, which is going to switch on now. Switch off Alexa, stay well. various different other devices that people could use to help to increase their productivity, and moving into the AI world with the writing on your behalf, setting the plan for the traveling or journey or whatever. It's maybe a visit at the hospital or preparation for visits with your nurse, etc., etc. So there's a lot to rely on. Would you agree? Amy, what do you think about the helping yourself with technology to navigate?
Yeah, there's a lot of things out there that can help. And I think it is just finding what works for you and what would support you the best. But I loved what you said about goals as well. And I think it is just about being realistic and not setting yourself up for failure. There's back a few years ago, I would set myself really strict goals that I would never
Achieve.
complete, because you have to be realistic and you have to realize that some days are going to be good, some days aren't, and that's okay. So it's just about, being flexible and, just realistic, kind to yourself, and getting support from as many different places as possible. Because, like we said, there's so many things now that can help us with so many different things. So, yeah.
Our brains tends to fixate on some events, some sort of stories in our minds. We're always constantly thinking about something. Our mind is busy all the time. Everyone's. It's not just you that is obsessed about something, but it's just how we set ourselves, how we take our step backwards and observe these thoughts from a distance. Imagine maybe you're floating on the nice, fluffy cloud, and the other clouds are your thoughts that keeps coming. But what you could choose is not to build a whole story or drama inside your mind, but let these kind of thoughts that keeps coming, they will be coming. The more you try to suppress, the more they become visible and accessible. So I think my recommendation would be try to observe these kind of thoughts without creating another story, because that's how you keep your resilience and awareness in that present moment without overwhelming yourself. Amy, I would like to speak about your favorite topic that you're most passionate about is MS Together. And you're doing the wonderful job throughout MS Together, and you create spaces for people, young people who don't have to perform, maybe that they are too well or super good. They all more or less on the same boat. They don't need to hide anything, their struggles. You have an open, honest conversation, especially with young people in early life. So tell us a little bit your ideas around this project and charity, and how people evaluate what you do and what do they find when they join MS Together.
Yeah, so I think that the reason behind setting up MS Together was it started through my own personal journey. So it started with me getting those kind of comments like, but you don't look ill, but you look so well. And that led me to start a blog, which I named But You Don't Look Ill. And I just started to share my whole journey about MS, from kind of start to the diagnosis to choosing a treatment, to just living everyday life, to navigating dating, to work, to so many things. And through that, I then found lots of other young people that were feeling very similar to me. And I think that then made me realize that there were lots of other young people out there that also didn't really feel like they had anyone else to speak to about the condition. I think I found lots of great support out there. There were so many amazing charities offering lots of things, kind of different services. But what I didn't find was that age-specific support and spaces for people to just, like you said, just speak to each other and have those kind of open conversations without feeling judged, without feeling that they needed to perform. And it started with just a very informal support group. And then over the years, it just grew into what it is today, which is now, like you said, a charity, and we provide lots of different services. But I think the main thing And the reason why I think people don't feel like they have to perform when they come to us is because we have designed everything with people living with MS. And that means that there's a lot of flexibility, there's permission to show up exactly as you are. And we don't expect people to be positive all the time. There are lots of people that are positive all the time, but we don't expect that. We don't expect them to have to explain themselves. And there's no kind of pressure to engage in any particular way. There's lots of different ways that people can get involved, from our kind of support groups to our events. And I think in practice, it's been building kind of that flexibility into the charities. For example, with our event, people can arrive late, they can leave early, they can take breaks, they can join a virtual call and they don't need to turn their camera on. They can just sit there and listen and take in the information. And there's just no expectation, which I think is so important in kind of creating that safe space for people. And I think, as another example is in our support groups, we've got very clear guidelines that prioritize kindness and respect and mutual support. And I think it is just about creating a space that people feel safe in, and a space where they feel like they won't be judged and they won't be pressured to present themselves in a certain way.
That idea of permission, not having to pretend, feels incredibly powerful. And if you're age 35, this is the limit age, and if you're younger than 35, you are fully accepted to be part of the MS Together. Is that correct, Amy?
Yeah, most of our services are aimed at people aged 18 to 35 in the UK and Ireland, but we do have some services. So we've got a support helpline, we've got a newly diagnosed guide that's currently being developed, and those are all open to anyone affected by MS. So we predominantly focus on that age group because we feel like it's important for that kind of age group to have age-specific support. But we didn't want to completely close off everything, as we know that obviously MS affects so many people from all age groups. Yeah, it's important that we still offer some things to anyone.
Wonderful. And how people can find you? Is it they Google MS Together, or there is a specific link that they need to follow?
Yeah, so Google MS Together. We're also on social media platforms, and our handle is MS Together Official. But yeah, you should be able to find us by Googling, and our website is mstogether.org as well.
Okay, wonderful. So people tune in to and listen to all these positives that we just described, and find your peers that are living with MS and experiencing exactly the same, and they were numerous amount of times told that they look good. Nothing is wrong with them. So there is and behind the real world, there is an alternative world that I tried to summarize in one of the recent series. You can go and listen to the latest episode and read around stranger things in MS. But what we'd like to say that, Amy, I think you're giving an opportunity and a lifeline for majority of people, and this is initiative with some psychology service and support, giving opportunity for people to be open and honest and talk to each other. We are social creatures. We have to connect and communicate with each other, because it takes your mental overload when you start expressing yourself. Even if you are introvert and you want to hide yourself, exchanging a few thoughts and ideas that's how you start feeling more sane about yourself living with this condition, and in particular if it is invisible MS. And my last question, what's one assumption you wish clinicians, employers, and even loved ones would stop making about people living with invisible MS?
I think I'm probably going to repeat myself, but I think it is just the fact that looking well doesn't always equal feeling well. And yeah, just because someone doesn't look unwell doesn't mean they aren't managing symptoms or the kind of emotional weight of MS. And I think also many people with MS are capable, driven, and doing amazing things with their lives, but that doesn't mean that they don't need understanding, flexibility, and sometimes just a bit of patience. And I think just because someone is doing all those amazing things and they might come across as like they're doing really well, I think just try and keep in the back of your head that there could be a lot more going on. And I think I also wish that there was more trust in people's self-knowledge. And I think MS can affect people in so many different ways, like we've talked about. But if you have assumptions about how it will affect someone and you're not really listening to them, even though they're the expert, I think, that's when misunderstandings can happen and the support might not be there for that person. So I think, just listening, asking, and believing is what I would say. Listening to someone's experiences and how they're feeling and how it's affecting them. Asking how you can support them and how you can help them and what's going on that day. And then believing what they're saying, because I've heard so many stories from speaking to people in the community where they don't get believed about certain symptoms. And a lot of that is because they're not visible. But I think people are, and I think the fact that MS is known as an invisible condition, we just need to get back to believing people's experience.
That's such an important reminder. Assumptions, even kind ones, can quietly cause a lot of emotional problems, sometimes harm. And although intentions are not bad, but always think about these sensitive questions or comments that you give it to people. It's just being good communicator. We should invest more time to learn how to best communicate with each other. And for that, I suggest people read books. Read books. It really helps to understand the practicality and improves our language. And what do we say? Sometimes we need to be quiet and just listen, be present, and offer some help. That's not going to harm anybody if you offer your help. Amy, thank you, not just for sharing your story, but for giving language to experiences to so many people who living with this condition will recognize that. And we very rarely have a chance to reflect back when we've done already and we said things, but this is a chance for us to, if you're living with MS, reflect what you had already without building these stories and dramas in your mind, just observing these kind of previous experiences and let them go as clouds. For people who never approached or never met a person living with MS, this is a learning point for you to learn how to use the language and not to expose with unnecessary comments that may be harmful and emotionally impacting and causing a lot of trouble. For carers and parents and family members, a reflection time during this recording and trying to improve. If you want to see the change or have a different outcomes each time, you need to change your language, to change what you're doing, to change your habits, whatever it matters to you. If you're listening and parts of this conversation felt familiar, please know this invisible MS does not mean mild MS. And certainly it doesn't mean you owe anyone proof. At Be Well with MS, we believe care begins with communication, understanding. Understanding begins when we listen. If this episode resonates with you, consider sharing with someone who might need to hear all this. A friend, a colleague, a carer, parent, maybe your clinician needs to listen to this. Until next time, be gentle with your energy, take care of your nervous system, and remember, just because something is invisible doesn't mean it's insignificant. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Bye. Bye.